Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. And recently I had posted a video where we discussed the origin and actual purpose of the vast majority of asset flip games on Steam. Members of the Steam group Guardians of Greenlight, a Steam community devoted to consumer advocacy and protection, brought to my attention a Russian website that sheds some light on the how and the why most of these asset flip games exist. Now, this involves what is called card farming, a method of harvesting Steam trading cards from games that are bought on the cheap or free in order to convert them into gems. This is done en masse using groups of farm bots and control programs in order to automate the system and harvest the cards as quickly as possible. Now, from there, the card farmers have variable avenues to take. Last time, while I was recording the video, the rusted hamster wheel that is my brain started turning, and I came up with a viable method of converting asset flip card farming into a profitable venture inside of 30 seconds, and I admitted right then that it was an extremely unrefined idea, and I was sure that these people had it nailed down to an exacting science to be able to maximize their profits. Now, I have since received several messages and comments asking where the follow-up video was, and I haven't been ignoring this topic. Indeed, I have been spending a great deal of time on it. The reason why it's taken so long is that I wanted to find viable methods for explaining the how and the why from end to end, while also not actually teaching anyone how to do this stuff. And through this, I needed to answer a variety of questions, such as how do they actually garner enough gems to be worthwhile with the trading cards? There was also the question, what are the different avenues of generating income from these trading cards? Also, the possibility had to be considered that they are manipulating the system in order to generate additional worthwhile cards, essentially maximizing their investment to income ratio. Now, finally, and most importantly, the question had to be answered, how do they pull these funds out of Steam? So to start off with, how do they gather up enough gems to be able to proceed? Well, this question is actually more complicated than one might imagine, and also at the same time, somewhat simpler than one might imagine. It was actually quite a bit easier for them to do this back in 2015. The flooding of asset flippers and card farmers has oversaturated the market, much the same as the asset flips themselves have flooded the Steam market. These asset flippers use either their individual accounts, a few accounts, or even hundreds of bots in order to farm Steam trading cards. Of course, the vast majority of money to be made are from higher-priced games, and the more quickly cards can be harvested once the game releases, the better. Now, many of these asset flips typically garner between 10 and 20 gems per trading card at launch, and as such are of little use to anyone except card farmers themselves. More often than not, these cards are bought on the cheap or gotten for free. In Russia, these games are typically purchased usually for 1 American cent. Now, one of the more common uses for these cheap games are to grind out achievements, reason being that once an account reaches level 50, they have a 100% chance of a pack drop after a badge is crafted from the game cards. These packs contain additional trading cards, emotes, backgrounds, and even occasionally some foil card drops. Some of these emotes even grant upwards of 200 gems each. Now, all of this is used in a variety of ways. The first is, of course, to sell bags of gems themselves. At the time this video was recorded, the average going rate for a bag of gems, which is 1,000 gems, is 98 cents. Not a lot of money, but typically an investment of between 40 and 80 cents is all that is needed to garner 1,000 gems, which is profit right there, but not very much. Now, gems can also be converted into card packs for other games. This can be done to trade cards worth more money than the original value of the gems used to create them. These are typically most lucrative when a game first comes out and can be tracked quite easily via sites like SteamCardExchange.net, a trading card site that tracks current market values on Steam trading cards. And this is their current report for a game on Steam called Moe Mercury, and yes, I'm probably mispronouncing that. Now, this game, that is 40% off on Steam right now, and as such costs $3 to purchase. That is, of course, assuming that the game was purchased through legitimate means. Also, as different countries have different values on games, I'm sure that these titles are far less expensive in Russia and many other countries than in the US. These games also come with card drops and, of course, the drop that comes from crafting the badge for the game itself. And more often than not, the profit on this game's cards making use of the gems garnered from smaller asset flip titles will allow that 40 to 80 cent investment into profit once the cost of the larger game has been recouped. These games are cycled off fairly regularly as the market becomes overflooded for that particular game, and unsold cards are either sold off for gems on third-party sites or converted into gems to be able to use on other games, and the cycle continues. Of course, every once in a while a foil trading card will drop that will be worth significantly larger amounts of funds. The goal is always to trade up and be mindful of costs. Of course, none of this explains how to get the money out of Steam. This was something that everyone should have been able to suspect, and one very clear indication involves the 2016 controversy surrounding T. Martin, Pro Syndicate, and Psy Syndicate, and others in the CSGO gambling fiasco. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, you need only see my top 10 gaming controversies or my direct discussion surrounding T. Martin and Pro Syndicate to see how damaging to the consumer they were, lying to their viewer bases and encouraging underage gambling, all to line their own pockets. These CSGO gambling sites used readily available APIs to hook their websites into Steam's systems to allow people to bet their CSGO skins and to use real-world money as well. Now, it was the existence of these APIs that give us our answer. Now, this is the Market.net site, a Russian website that allows people to sell items for real-world money for Dota 2, CSGO, and Team Fortress 2. It also allows people to sell Steam games via the game gift exchange on Steam. These items are typically sold well below market value, much the same as what you find at G2A.com. However, even though these items are slightly depressed from market values within Steam, they allow people to buy and sell items outside of Steam, which allows them to collect their money in the real world. Now, Total Biscuit himself commented on my previous video stating that Valve is well aware of the issue and are taking steps to rectify it in their upcoming changes that will be rolled out most likely over the course of the next year. But even in Total Biscuit's and Jim Sterling's videos discussing their recent visit to Valve and the meetings that took place there, the topic of the Steam trading card system was only lightly touched upon, and no firm information was given in regards to how they intend to resolve this widespread issue that plagues the Steam storefront. Well, I should say no firm information was outright stated, but it seems their intent was at least heavily implied. And that intent is, realistically, to do nothing. Or more, I should say, next to nothing. And one thing that the CSGO gambling fiasco taught us is that Valve is loath to act directly against a system that garners them significant amounts of money unless it reaches a point where it is either more hassle than it's worth from a public relations standpoint, or it becomes a potential issue from a legality standpoint. Now, Valve made millions of dollars from the sale of crates and keys for games like CSGO, and the vast majority of that was a direct result of the gambling sites. Valve only turned their backs on the gambling sites once the T. Martin and Pro Syndicate controversy surfaced. Now, much the same will happen here with the asset flip games. Valve's intended revamping of the Steam Storefront and curation system will do their best to hide these asset flip games, but it will do little or nothing to banish them from existence. It is a very out-of-sight, out-of-mind method of thinking and is very in keeping with Valve's reported extreme reticence to take action on behalf of their consumers. Now, make no mistake, this is big business and nets Valve considerable sums of money. Indeed, the only way they would be able to truly shut down these fake games, as they call them, would be to make the cost of getting them onto the Steam storefront prohibitively high. So high, in fact, that it would inhibit legitimate independent developers from being able to publish their own titles on the storefront. Valve knows this and also knows they would be cutting off a significant revenue stream, so their resolution is to merely allow it to continue and to sweep them under the rug so that most people will not even see those games. And realistically, it would be too far-reaching and expensive for Valve to make the change themselves. And in my mind, there is a better solution. One similar to what Total Biscuit proposed in response to the fact that false DMCA takedowns are still inflicted on smaller YouTube channels on a daily basis, in that he proposed that these asset flippers who file the false DMCAs have their games stricken from the Steam storefront as a direct response to what is realistically an assault on Valve's consumers and their biggest advertisers. Now, much the same could be done here with the asset flip titles to begin with, except that the system could be far simpler. If asset-packed storefronts like the Unity Store, the Unreal Engine Marketplace, and the Game Guru Store were to alter their copyright on assets sold and their terms of service to disallow direct asset flipping, then Steam consumers would be able to report the copyright violation and Valve would be forced to remove the titles in order to comply with the law. This would be a far simpler system and would not require a complete revamping of Valve's back end. Valve could even champion the cause with those storefronts to press for the change to the copyright documentation and come out winning the Consumer Advocacy of the Year award. And that is most likely the only true way we will ever see a resolution to these asset flip titles that infest the storefront, by once again using a third party's system to affect the change where it's needed most. It speaks very much toward the interdependency of these different companies and their reliance on each other that this is the most viable option. But what do you think? Do you think that forcing an update to the copyright clause would be effective? Do you have a different idea or recommendation on how to stem the flood? Let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear any other ideas that anyone might have. And while you're at it, please do like and share. Hopefully someone at Valve will see this video and will hopefully act upon the information taken therein, or maybe even someone over at Unity or Game Guru or Unreal. And if you're new to the channel, then please do remember to subscribe. It does help out more than you know. And if you want to support my channel even further, there are links to my vid.me, Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and more down in the description down below. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and thanks for watching.